Tzadik Beis Amud Beis 92a. Sorry, Tzadik Beis Amud Aleph. The line beginning to the word Beis Afel, or Bias Afel, and it starts at the beginning of the line. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom. That's correct. Middle of the line, Amar Rab Tevi. The Gemara now returns to the discussion of biblical citation for, or scriptural citation for, the resurrection of the dead. That was the opening of the discussion of this chapter. And after a little digression into the issue of Das, into the issue of teaching students, and Rachmanis, and mercy, and empathy, and all of that, which we discussed at length, the Gemara returns back to the discussion of the resurrection and scriptural citation therein. So it says the Gemara, Amar Rab Tevi. Rab Tevi says, Amar Rab Yeshaya, Yoshia. My Diksiv, Rab Tevi said, in the name of Rabbi Yeshia, what's the meaning of the following verse? It's in Mishlei. It's a bit of a cryptic verse. And the verse reads like this. Sha'oil, the depth. Sha'oil means the depth, but it can mean, here it means the grave. Sometimes Sha'oil could also mean can mean purgatory. Sha'oil means the depth, but not in a geographic sense, as when you're going down, metaphorically. Going way down. That's what Sha'oil is. Here it means the grave. So Sha'oil, the grave, Va'itzer Rechem, and the womb. Eretz le'sava mayim, land that is not satiated by water. And then it concludes ve'esh, and fire le'amra hain. Don't say they have things. I mean, they don't say that they have.
They want more.
You know, they're not satisfied with what they have. So the verse is very cryptic. What does this mean? It could be that just on a simple level means that these things constantly swallow up. Death is inevitable. The womb, people are always giving birth. Water that's unsatiated, earth is always going to be absorbing water, and fire is always going to be consuming. It could be just being that, but it's a little bit more cryptic, obviously. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's what the literal meaning of the verse is. Is it? I think that's what it is. The verse is saying these are items that are never satisfied. They're always taking more. People are always giving birth. People are always dying. The earth is always absorbing water, and fire is always consuming. But here the Gemara says as follows: why does the pasuk put the womb and the grave right next to each other? They seem to be opposite ends of life, the beginning and the end. So what's the story? So this is the Gemara like this: Ella rather, I will have to teach you. Ma'rechem, just like the womb, machnes, takes in the seed. The womb absorbs the seed of the father, of the husband. Umoitzi, and then it produces a child. Af, likewise. Sha'oil, the grave, machnes, receives, takes in the body at death. Umoitzi, and gives out a body at the resurrection. So even though the verse is talking specifically about how they're never satisfied, right? That the womb and the grave are both never satisfied, but they're actually opposites, and the womb is out of place in the rest of the verse. The rest of the verse is the grave, which constantly takes people because people are always dying. The earth is always absorbing water, and fire is always consuming. So all of these things are talking about how they always take things in. Whereas when it comes to the womb, it's always giving. People are always giving birth. It's actually always giving out. It seems
takes in the seed.
That's the Gemara's answer. On the simple reading, it seems out of place, and that all the other things just consume, whereas the womb doesn't consume. It's both consume and give. And thus the Gemara says the reason why the verse specifically puts the womb in this list is to tell you that even the grave, which takes in, also gives out. Otherwise, the comparison between these items aren't completely aligned. The womb seems out of place in this list of things that just consume, like the earth consuming water, the fire consuming things that it burns up, etc., or the grave consuming people. But now that we understand that the womb consumes seed and produces a child, so likewise the grave consumes a body, but it will also produce a body with the resurrection.
Actually fits well with the rest with the earth as well.
The earth absorbs water and produces seed, produces fruit, and the fire
It's good because that's the
First of all, the Gemara actually doesn't quote that part of the verse.
Yeah.
The Gemara does not quote the first part of the fire. But anyway, but yeah.
But this no, it's nice. Sometimes a forest fire is good for a forest because the old trees die.
The compost creates compost, which disintegrates and becomes.
Often to go down with the new.
Yeah, exactly. The old trees that's a good standard.
Anyway, we can break this down because like when it comes to the fire.
The cycle of life.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the Gemara does not quote that part of the verse. The part of the verse which is fire, which would seem to fall with what we're saying here. Anyway, says the Gemara this: is the matter not a fortiori, which means you have something which is lighter and something which is heavier in idea. So if the lighter thing has that, then certainly the heavier things has that. The greater item always has that which the lesser item has plus. So let's look at what the lighter item has. Let's see. Now, ma rechem, when it comes to the womb, it absorbs the seed quietly, discreetly. Right? Intimacy is discreet. So might see mimenu, but when it produces that child, it's bakoile, it's very loud, lots of noise. Woman's in pain. She's producing a child, it's very painful. There's a lot of noise. So she takes in her seed discreetly and then produces the child loudly. So she'oil, the grave. Shemachnisim by bakoilos, it absorbs with lots of noise. People are mourning, crying, wailing. There's noise when there's burial, unfortunately. So says the Gemara, Ein Din, is it not logical? That should also produce with great fanfare and great noise the resurrection, which is going to be with jubilation and noise. So if the Efer Torah is like this, the womb is lighter than death in that the womb takes in a lighter way, in a quieter way, and yet it produces a child. The grave absorbs in a heavier way than the womb with noise. Then certainly when it's going to produce with great noise. This is the literal meaning of the Gemara. Obviously, what does noise have to do with anything?
Yeah.
What does the sounds have to do with anything? The floor is open. Yeah.
Imagination isn't working today on this. I'm not saying it.
I don't know. I'm just putting this out there. I'm sure there's more to it. The discretion of intimacy, and then the fact that birth is done with some noise.
Maybe
and
birth
the Gemara says, the intimacy is as in when the seed goes into the womb.
Right.
But it's also interesting, I'm just going to point this out there, that when the Gemara talks about birth, it says koile koiles, sounds of sounds, double expression of sound, of noise, double noise. When it comes to the grave taking in, it only says koiles in the singular, one set of noise. And then when it produces again, when the grave produces again, meaning resurrection, it's koile koiles again. So there's 3 levels: quiet, koiles noise, which is when someone's buried, and then there's koile koiles, noise of noise, double noise, and that's by birth and by resurrection. So I'm putting that out there also. I'm sure when you're looking into deeper explanations, I'm sure this should also be.
I'll give a simple one. Koile koiles. Because when a child is born, there are 2 noises. The child cries and the mother is screaming.
And when it comes to resurrection,
the person is
the person who's coming up, and then the person who's
his family.
The family is receiving
because
him.
When he got buried, only
only the mourners are crying,
but not the person who passed away. But now they'll both be in joy.
Interesting, simple.
Simple explanation.
Both the one coming to life and the one receiving that new life.
Yeah.
Parent and the child, and then the deceased and the one who receiving the deceased in resurrection. But when the person is being buried, there's only one set of crying. Only the living are crying. The dead who's being buried is not crying.
But I thought when you're dying, though, the stories I've heard from people is that even a rabbi came here to speak here was that you're greeted by your family
in heaven. We're talking about in this physical world, though.
Now we're talking about
But the physical on earth. On heaven there could be lots of noise, but this is in earth.
So
Anyway,
that's
very interesting.
You're absolutely right.
But actually, Rashi's version has that burial also has koile koiles. Rashi's version of the Gemara has koile koiles, sound of sounds, even by death. So this thing I just pointed out, that the death has one singular set of koiles. That's not Rashi's version. Yeah. Rashi's version says that even burial is double crying. That's Rashi's version of the Gemara. Anyway, all this is
public versus private, like you said?
Yeah, it's another way. Kol HaKolos, exactly. It's another way. But
Yeah, but burial is also public.
That's what I said.
That's
Right, but birth is not
Kol HaKolos.
public though.
That's right. Not
Birth is not public. It's just loud.
Well,
Yeah.
it's kind of public, like everybody knows
No,
that
no,
there's a
they're
child.
private.
It's a private event.
No, it's private.
It's a private event. It's just loud.
Yeah.
It's only the doctors and the mother.
Private.
No doctors, nurses, and the mother.
For the most
It's not.
part.
It's not kings. Back in the old days, to have public events for childbirth. It's just a weird thing. The kings want to show off their progeny from the moment of birth and display their wives in public. But
An heir.
normal
an heir-
behavior
You
is
have an heir being that was very strong.
an heir being born. Yeah, but for most people, this is a
The
private
line-
event.
The line of kingship is important.
Anyway, I'm just putting it all out there. Think about it. Maybe tomorrow we'll have something.
Yeah.
But just putting it all out there. Okay, says the Gemara, Mikan from here. Tshuva is a response la'omim to those who say, Ein tchis ha'meisim Torah. There's no indication for the resurrection of the dead from Scripture. Here you have Scripture which implies the resurrection. So this is just one passage of the Gemara. We'll stop it here. And tomorrow we have more passages of the Gemara. And God willing, we'll get to the Rebbe's explanation on the next passage of the Gemara. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
What's the